Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. We're live for another Inkarnate stream. Today, we are going to be showing you just how to make a village in just 20 minutes using the Watercolor City style. So basically, the point of this stream is that I just want to show that following some basic principles it can help you to make a village or a city, actually, more of a village, rather quickly. I think this stream is kind of geared towards those of you who you're a DM, you're in a rush, and you need to quickly just pump out a village. Maybe it's like the starting village, or you need as it's like the starting point for some kind of one shot or whatever it might be. You need to have some kind of village. So it doesn't have to be necessarily 20 minutes. It can be take a little bit longer, but I'm just going to go through some basic steps. I didn't do any pre-planning actually for this because I was more focused on just kind of showing you that you can make a village in a short period of time. But if you are watching this and you don't care about making a village in 20 minutes, at least follow through the process, because the process will help you to make a village, whether you want to make it quickly or whether you want to make it slowly. That's up to you. Hey, deep voice guy. I'm glad that you're here. Hey, Santum DM. Awesome. Sweet. Seeing some familiar faces. I love to see it. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to use the Watercolor City style for this. And let that open up. I'm going to go in Ultra 4K. If you have a lower end machine, I might recommend you edit in maybe 2K or maybe a 3K. If you have a nice machine, 4K is great. 4K helps with kind of getting rid of the blur that you see when you are working on a map at a lower resolution. We'll go ahead and call this 20-minute village. Again, it doesn't have to be 20 minutes. Just follow the process, and that will help you through. We'll let this load up, and we're just going to jump in here and get this started here. Now, there's a couple rules that I generally kind of just have when putting together any kind of map. Oh, thank you, deep voice guy. Appreciate that. Yes, I love the details, and I'm not the only one, too. There are other people who are watching in now who also love to add details to their map, so that's pretty exciting. So there's some basic principles that I like to follow when I'm putting together any kind of map. And if anyone who's a regular here, they know that I harp on about this like a broken record constantly. It's all about contrast. If you're ever struggling with figuring out what kind of terrain to make, contrast is the trick. So whenever you're putting together any map, a city map, a world map, whatever, you always build from the ground up. Okay, so that means you build the terrain first, and then you would build the village on top of the terrain. You wouldn't make the village and then make the terrain second, right? You always build from the ground up. It's how reality works too, right? We find a good location that's in the physical world, and then we build there, right? We build the foundation, you excavate, you build the foundations, and then you kind of build your way up, right? It's the same concept here when you're working on a regular map, right? When you're working on a regular map, you always start with the land first, and then you make your way up. So we're going to start by making a interesting landscape. It's going to be kind of eye-catching and will be a good location for a village. And if you're ever doing an exterior map, whether it's a battle map or a city map or whatever it might be, if you're struggling with what kind of landscape to make for whatever map you're making, follow these simple rules of contrast, right? And everyone knows I harp on that. The contrast rules are things like maybe you should have a water source. Water contrasts against land. Maybe you should have some high elevation, maybe it's up in the mountains, or maybe there's some rolling hills, right? By adding some contrast between height and depth, you create a more compelling composition. Same thing, water and land, it becomes a more compelling composition. Or maybe it's not water, maybe it's a river made of lava, or a frozen river, or a river made of slime, or a poisoned river, or maybe it's a lake, a river island, a lake island, whatever it might be, right? If you follow these rules of contrast, then your compositions become a little bit more interesting. So that's really the way that I go about that. Hey, Lord Brady, glad that you're here, by the way, and we'll get your problem resolved as well. Okay, so for what I'll do first is I do want to create this contrast. So I could either that I want to do water and land, but I also want to do height and depth as well as part of my contrast, right? Maybe the more and more contrast that I add to the map, the more compelling the map will look. So I'll start with the basic one is I just want to have land. So I'll just go fill all, and it will fill the entire thing with the add mode of the mask tool. And then if I can go in here and go to subtract, and I can remove that if need be, right? I'm also going to turn the mask effects off. They're just not necessary right now. We might use them later, but also since we're editing in 4K, turning off your mask effects will help to kind of keep the resources down, the resource drain on your computer, so you won't get as much lag by turning off your mask effects. So I'll go ahead and fill this back up. I just go to fill and it will fill the entire thing up. So that first step, and you'll notice right away that the default textures for both the FG and the BG layers are exactly what you expect, right? The BG layer is water and the FG layer is this grass texture. You can change those textures at any time. You'll notice here that there's a background and foreground, so you can switch at any time. If you wanted to change the color of the background, you can. You can go to the foreground, you can change that as well, right? So not complex, pretty easy stuff. So what I'll do is I'll create like a compelling scene. I think what I'll do is first create a water source. It could be a lake, could be a river, a stream, whatever it might be. And when I'm making it, I want to make it a little bit more compelling, right? Remember, this is a village, so the scale is probably going to be a little bit on the larger side, right? Because let's place a stamp down so we can get an idea for it. Let me just place one stamp so you can get an idea for the scale. This is one stamp at 100%, right? It's okay to go up a little bit since it's just a village, but let's just work with the 100% scale for now. Hey, Becca. I'm glad that you're here. Awesome. And Alice is here, and Vivi. All my favorite people are here. I love this. This is great. So now that I kind of have that stamp there, it gives me an idea for scale. Now I should go in and kind of make some kind of water source. Okay, and what I'll do is to see the width of the river, I'm going to look and control the size. Right now I'm holding down the shift key and using my mouse scroll wheel to control the size. I can tell you right now that if you want to work a little bit more efficiently and quickly, I recommend that you use shortcut keys. Shortcut keys are so helpful. If you don't know where to find them, you can just press the K key and they'll all pop up. Use these shortcut keys because they will help to speed up your process. So I'm using that shift key and scroll mouse wheel, and this will kind of help me decide how wide the river is or whatever that I'm making there. I think about that size looks good. It's several houses across, so that means it's wide enough. And when I make my river, a couple things I won't do is I'm not going to go straight across like this. I'm not going to go straight in that direction. You're not going to do a straight line. Rivers have what's called meanders. They bend, right? And meanders exist for several reasons. It's the way that they meander around the landscape, around the terrain. Also, they meander because of the way that the water flows on each side, right? It carves out, expanding. The river expands its meander outward as the water carries the sediment of the bank away. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and just start over in this corner right here and then just make like these little S curves like this. I can make it like that. If you're not happy with that S curve, I am using a pen, by the way. When I do this, you can make the curves a little bit smaller like this. That is a pen. Let me show you how I do it with a mouse. When it comes to a mouse, it's okay if you make mistakes. The way that I do it is I just go slowly. When I'm using a mouse, I go slowly. You can go quickly with a pen, but when you go with a mouse, you just have to go a little bit slower and you'll get a better results. And the reason why is because when you're using a mouse, your hand kind of jitters a little bit more as it's trying to go across the mouse pad. So just go a little bit slower and it will be easier to do that. So a little trick there to help you out. Now that I have like the water source, which it looks nice, now I can kind of maybe say, well, why don't I also add some elevation to the terrain? Remember the second trick for contrast? It's elevation. It's depth and height, right? We've got our water source, that's one. Why don't we go ahead and do that? Why don't we start with our shallow terrain first, where there's some subtle elevation changes. And what I'll do is a river is generally not just flat at the edge like this. It would be nice to put in a couple things there. So why don't we use some stamps? And whenever I'm doing a gradual elevation change, I actually don't use some of the stamps from the watercolor styles. I actually like to use a certain hill stamp, which kind of shows a gradual elevation change, and it's called hills. So I'm gonna go in the fantasy battle map style. You just go into that left panel there where it says navigator. Make sure that you have pack selected, and then right here you'll have craggy hill and a rocky hill. I use the craggy hill for slight elevation changes, because the cliffs, no matter what style you're using, the cliffs are like just a complete drop off straight down, right? And that works great for tall cliffs. But what happens if you want to show a gradual elevation change that goes up to a cliff, or a gradual elevation change down to a river? To do that, you'll have to use a hill. So, and these work just fine with watercolor cities as well. And what's also really nice about these hills is that you don't have to use a pen or use a drawing pen to do this. You can use a mouse as well. And one of the great things I love about this is that you can use a pen to do this. And by that, I mean the pen option right here, not a drawing pen. Okay. And what's nice about this is that when you use the drawing pen for this, when you use the pen right here, you'll be able to go along the edges like this, and it will still be curved. It won't be straight, because those hills are still have enough curvature inside of the stamp itself, so that when you place them, it won't look like they're just a straight line, right? So I'll place it down. I'm also going to flip. If you notice that when you place them down right away, they're facing the wrong way, you're going to end up doing this a lot. You just need to go and just flip like this. And what we'll do is we'll create this gradual incline that goes down to the river part like this. That works out just fine. And you can copy and paste this and just flip it like this if you want. And if that doesn't work, you can just go back and do the pen again. So I'll go ahead and just do the pen along here. That way, I mean, I can draw it too with the mouse. Like here, this is what it looks like with the mouse, but I'm noticing that you can get some weird nodes when using the mouse. You see how jittery it is? And you get these really weird nodes when you do it by hand with a mouse. And I don't really care for that. That's why the pen is so much more helpful for this, because again, it won't be perfectly straight. So let's just do this. Don't worry if it hugs exactly along the river bank, that's fine. It doesn't have to. Some parts can hug really close, and some it doesn't have to. Let's make sure that it's facing the wrong way. Notice it's facing the wrong way, so just quickly flip. There we go. And now you have like these kind of more gradual like hills that go down to the riverbank. There's your first step. And now that we have that saved, why don't we create some more elevation changes? And what's really, really helpful with when you're putting together terrain for any kind of town or village, it's knowing that elevation can help to make a city more protected, right? The higher up in elevation, the better view that the defenders of the city or the village can see, the harder it is for troops to go up a slope to do a charge or attack. And so having some kind of elevation works as a natural defense, even for a village. So why don't we create some elevation locations for this village? And we'll switch over to the shape tool for this, because what we're going to do is we're going to create some hills or some slow elevation changes, and then we'll use some cliffs to create some taller sections. And that way we'll have a kind of a unique blend of shallow and high locations on the map to create that nice contrast. So you can use the pen again for this if you wish, or you can use the brush. I find that both work well. What I'll do though is to avoid too many nodes. When you use a brush like this, you're going to notice that there's a lot more nodes when you use the brush. If I go over to right over here and then I select nodes right here, you see how many nodes there is? There's a lot of them, right? More nodes is okay. It means there's going to be more circular elements, and that's okay. But I end up generally using the pen just so that if I do end up using that same shape again with a different stamp, it will work a little better. So if I switch over to pen like this, we can go ahead and create this. I'm going to make sure it's set to a shape. We'll use the pen here. And what I'll do is I'll just create a series of nodes. And I want to create this like hill. That's a little too many. Let's actually make it a little bit smaller. Like this, just single click with my mouse. I want to be able to make sure that everyone can kind of do this. So I'll make sure to use the mouse. There we go. This gives us a nice little shape right here. Just go plus. There we go. It's facing the right way. That looks good. Let's go ahead and rotate this. I can rotate it if I want to, which is so nice. Like I want to get it to fit a little bit better. Maybe right against here looks nicer. I think right about there looks good. Let's go with that. It looks like it's facing the wrong way, so we'll quickly flip. There we go. And now I can copy and paste this shape, and I can flip to a different hill. Let's use the craggy hill to show a little bit more elevation change going up. So I have this nice craggy hill. I have that slow elevation change, and then I have that little more elevation change right there. And then I can copy and paste one more and put that on the very top, and then we'll switch over, and then we'll choose a different for the more higher elevation sections. Let's go back to Watercolor Cities. There we go. And I can choose like this green hill looks fine. Let's try cliff real quick and just see what our options are. Those look good. This terrain is fine. Let's go through and just see what we have here for options. You know what? I do like this grassy hill. That looks kind of nice. Let's go with maybe that one. There we go. Got a nice grassy hill. I can see it just fine. Let's also bump up the stroke scale just a little bit so we can see it more. That looks good. There we go. I want to scale it down to where it kind of fits right into there. That looks good. And then what we'll also do, let me make sure the scale is right. Make sure it's lined up. There we go. So we have some nice gradual elevation there, as well as that grassy cliff at the top. That looks great. Why don't we also add, let's go ahead and add in just a little bit more terrain changes. And I'll just go ahead and use my regular drawing pen for this instead of the pen tool. And the way that I go about doing, if you wanted to show like varying heights of elevation that looks natural, don't have them all lined up perfectly. So like this, don't do this. You see how they're all lined up with each other? Don't do that. What you would do is you would create some variations, like maybe one like this, one like that, a variation there, a variation here, another variation like that. And by creating these various elevation changes like this, what you end up doing is creating a more compelling and more interesting landscape. It looks more natural, right? Cliffs don't always follow this perfect geometrical pattern, right? They end up shifting and changing and becoming craggy, and then sometimes there's low sections and high sections, and that's how you kind of create that more natural look to it when you're trying to put it together. So I think that looks good. Let's do that. Where are we at for time here? It took a little bit longer than 20 minutes. I'm not sure it's going to be exactly 20 minutes because I'm doing a lot of talking here. But I think you get the general idea on how to put it together, right? So that looks good. And then the next step is, once you've put all the terrain down, I think overall this looks pretty good. The terrain is here. We'll add shadows later. Let's actually start doing like some of the village planning. And the way that I go about village planning is pretty simple. What I would do first is pick the main structure that's going to be in the village. And generally the main structure or the center point in the village is going to be something like, it could be the largest farm or a manor house or the governor's building, the governor's mansion. It could be a town hall. It could be the tavern, right? Depends on the village, right? But there's usually some kind of central structure that the rest of the village is kind of built around, right? Whether it's the town well, or maybe it's a gallows if it's kind of a gothic horror, or maybe it's a coliseum, or some kind of fighting pit if it's going to be a village with a fighting pit to it, right? But some kind of central thing. And it could be any number of things. Like it could be a church, it could be a temple, it could be a small fort. It doesn't really matter. Why don't we go down a little bit and we kind of pick something a little bit bigger to be our centerpiece? It could be like a temple of some kind, like this right here, this university right here. This could act as a nice manor house right here. It's fairly large. It looks good. We can put that somewhere in here. I think that looks good. Let me make sure the scale is right. Yep, we're going to go in with 100%, so that way we don't have to change it. Historically, villages were built around a church. Absolutely deep voice guy. But this is fantasy. And if you do want it to be a church, it could be a fantasy temple of some kind, to some deity of some kind, right? So that would work good. But I usually put some kind of focal point. Again, it doesn't have to be a church. It could be a temple, whatever it might be. I think the governor's mansion works just fine. But I think to show that that central piece is going to be something a little bit different, why don't we actually put another like little, put it on top of a hill to show that it's that it's up on a hill and protected. So why don't we go over to, I'll use a brush this time. I'm going to go off to the side here and I'll just create a little hill. And when you're making your hills, again, don't have them be perfectly circular. Have them be a little more oblong. They'll be a little more interesting that way. I can copy and paste this and then maybe put that small hill. That should probably work. So let's put this on top like this. Let's bring up the size a little bit more. There we go. So it's just right there. Yeah, let's make sure this is facing the right way. We have to flip the stroke. That looks good. Let's also bring the stamp scale down a little bit. There we go. And now we have like this separate lock, this separate hill right here. And then this will kind of act as like where the manor house is. So we'll maybe bump up the scale to make it the right size. And then we'll put this right on top of that. There we go. Let's go with maybe like right about there. Looks good. That looks good. And then I can kind of rotate it like this. And I'll put it right here in the back side, like right here. I think that looks good. And now we have like a central focal point there. So that's good. So this part up here, think of this as like a grassy plateau. That'd be good. We can also add more layers to the village to make it more interesting. I think that's a good idea. Why don't we do that? Let's add a couple layers to the village. Let's go ahead and take that same grass brush there. And why don't we make a series of levels? So let's go ahead and bring the scale down a little bit. And what I'll do here is I'm going to use this instead. And I'll create a series of levels that you have to kind of go up to get to up there. Let me just see how this looks. You know, I'm not happy with that. So why don't we have it go like this? One over like that. Let's have another one that goes like this. There we go. That looks good. Okay, there we go. Now we have some multiple like levels that are going to be there. That makes kind of sense. Let's go ahead and turn off the caps for these two pieces. Those caps are just kind of getting in the way. There we go. Remove those caps. And so now you have these various levels that you go up. It's always a nice thing to add. And we have the central point at the top. Now we have this. So once you've put together a focal point and you have your terrain done, now you can start creating the main road or the main carriageway. And the main carriageway is generally going to start at the entrance and then move its way towards the central piece. One thing that might be nice is why don't we add in some walls? That should frame the whole thing. So why don't we do that? And for the walls, since it's just a village, we don't have to make massive stone. Why don't we use wood, right? It can be a cheaper material. We already have the height advantage, but to show that the village is not a sprawling city with all the resources that a city has, instead, we'll just make a wooden wall that's going to frame the whole thing and act as a defense. So let's go and do that real quick. And why don't we use some kind of wooden wall of some kind? Let me type in wood. A woof. I'm not sure what a woof is. There's this wooden wall right here. This looks good. Let's go with this one. It kind of has the right look to it. Let's go with that. And we're going to go with a shape, a pen. And then what I'll do is I'll just follow with the pen along this edge, like this, all along this edge. There we go. It needs to go around the entire city, or the village, sorry. Go around it. Here we go. All right, we might have to do some changes to the size and everything, but we'll get there. Let's just get ourselves ringed all the way around. There we go. Okay. Let me make sure that my merge shape is off so I don't accidentally merge it with anything. Press enter, go plus. There we go. There we go. And we have that nice shape. Let's go ahead and bring the size down a little bit. There we go. That looks good. And why don't we change the shadow a little bit? Because the shadow seems quite large. There we go. Let's also make the wood. We have a couple options here. Because the ground is so bright. Yes, this is absolutely live. Yes, absolutely, this is live. Because the ground is so bright green, why don't we use a dark color for the wood so that way that will pop out against that light green. Okay, so now we have a road. Now we have some kind of defense around it. Why don't we also create the entrance? It's probably always a good idea to create the entrance. That way we know. So what I'll do is I'll go back here. I'm just going to use this portal tool right here. And what this portal tool does is it lets me create an opening or a gap. So let's put the opening right here. It kind of makes sense. We'll have it go here, and then the road will wind upward in a very European style road. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to use a path to represent the road, but we're not going to end up keeping that path. We'll use it for something else. So let me just do this real quick. Let's have the path go like this. It goes in like this, and then it kind of loops and then makes its way like this. In fact, let me make a little bit more room between there and the cliff. So it loops. It's going to go like this, and then it will go up, and then it will go up like this, and then it will go up, and then it will go up like this, and then it will make its way up to here, right? And this will create tons of room for my little buildings here. But it will also fall, but it will do this very European style village because it's following the terrain instead of a straight line that goes boom, like an American style city where you have your axis just goes straight to it. This follows the terrain. It goes upward, up into the thing. So that's going to be very helpful. All right. Looking good so far. Let's go ahead and remove all these. We don't need these. If I actually just select one and then select all of this style, it will just remove it all. So there we go. So the next step is we want to create access, right? Like how is it that people are going to get onto this thing here? So we need to create some access points. Let's start with maybe creating some stairs, and we could do some natural stairs maybe. Like here's some natural stairs right here. Let's maybe try these. This looks good. To create some natural stairs that will go down. And what I'll do is, because they're not the right color, there are a couple options here. I can go to blend mode luminosity, bring that brightness down, and then bring that contrast down. And then I can get this nice stairwell that kind of goes, stair that goes down. I'll go ahead and create another one, turn the shadow off, go to luminosity, and then we'll create a series of stairs that kind of just move its way. Let's undo that real quick. Have another one that goes right there like that. And then we'll have another one that goes down like that. Oop, let's undo that. Let's go with this one might work well. Let me see here. This one looks good. And then I think let's bring the stair down a little bit. Let's go right there. Okay. And if you don't like that, that's okay. You can always do what's called switchbacks. When you have like this right here, this section right here is shallow or not as heavy an incline, but this section right here has a heavier incline. So what I would do is you could have stairs that go up this section, just going straight up like here. But when you get to the more steeper part, you might want to consider switching to what's called switchbacks. And a switchback is a way of diminishing the slope of stairs, right? If you were to go straight up like this, the slope would have to be intense as you're going up because it's just a much more bigger slope here, elevation there. So to mitigate that, you would create what's again called switchbacks. Switchbacks just switch back against each other. So it would look something like this, and then the switchbacks would take you up to the main gate. So why don't we do that? Why don't I start by creating the gate first? Let's go with that. Let's create a gate of some kind. Let's use the wooden one. That makes sense. Let's put a gate right there. I want it to fit the same kind of color as the wood there. So we'll bring the brightness down to make it match. And now we have a nice gate there. Let's put it on that side. So we have a gate. Then let's also create the switchbacks. And the way that I would go about the switchbacks is that I want it to create, let's make it natural instead of built. So why don't we do it like this? Let's have one stair a natural stair that goes up to the gate like this. And then what we'll do is we'll have a series of stairs, why don't we use a clipping mask for this? I got an idea. Let's use a clipping mask. Let's go with this. Let's use a brush. We'll turn off a stroke. We'll do fill clipping mask. And then what I'll do is I'm going to create a series of little switchbacks like this. So there's your clip mask kind of going down here. Let's put that there. Let's put this one here. There we go. Let's put that up a layer up above. There we go. Put that stair there. Now we have these kind of clip mask right here. Let's go ahead and bring the size down a little bit. There we go. We got some clip masks going on right there. You know what? I'm not happy with that. Let's not do that. Instead, sometimes you're not going to be happy with what you come up with. Just a heads up. It's just going to happen. Let's create a series of switchbacks that kind of go across kind of like this instead. Let's use a series of switchbacks that go like this. That looks better. And then I'll flip this. There we go. Yeah, I think that looks a little bit better. Okay. Hey, it's a rating party. Hey, thank you, by the way. Oh, and some first-time chatters here. Awesome. Great. Hey, Corwin Wolf, first-time chatter. Glad that you're here, and a raider. Thank you. Much appreciated. Shout out to you. Appreciate you very, very much. Okay. I think that looks good. These look a little dark, so I might select all from the set and just kind of bring the brightness up a little bit. There we go. That looks a little better. Okay, so now we have access that gets up here. That looks good. If you wanted to have that there are different layers to the village, you could have some walls that go around each cliff, but it's going to be a smaller village, so let's not worry about that. Let's go ahead and make the road first. You know, when it comes to making a road, I'm just very prone to using a lighter color. And the reason why is because the lighter color will contrast well against whatever stamp you're using. So I always use a lighter color for my roads. Oh yeah, look at all these people. Heck yeah. Thank you for rating. Much appreciated. I am the official Twitch Corwin, by the way. Yep, this is it. Absolutely. Becca nailed it. Let's go bring the opacity down, and then let's create that road, right? Let's bring the opacity back up. My mistake. Let's make that road. No, that isn't right. I want to make it central so that I could put buildings on each side of the road. That's why I'm being very careful about this. Let's do that one, and then the next one can be right here, going like this, up to this one, and then up to here, and then going up to there like that. There we go. Okay. So now we have that. Okay, that looks good. We got that. Let's also create the access points, right? If you're going to have access, like how are people getting up those cliffs right here? So you could put regular stairs or natural stairs, whichever one you think works best. Like if you want, you can put some natural stairs, just like right there if you'd like. You can flip. You're kind of going for more of a country natural kind of feel for it. So we could end up putting that one there, copy and paste, put another one right here like this, copy, paste another one. In fact, let's use a different one. Let's use one of the more longer ones, like maybe this one. And then let's kind of make it go down to here like that. There we go. Looks good. Let's also just curve it just a little bit, make it a little bit more interesting. So we'll add some curve to it. Usually when you're adding natural stairs, you want the stairs to kind of follow the terrain a little bit. You don't always have to do that, but I do find it helpful if the stairs are following the terrain. I think that should be okay like that, leading up to this. There we go. Our access looks good. Oopsie. Let's make sure that it lines up with the road. There we go. That looks good. Oop, where am I? 168 changes. Let's save it real quick. And then we'll go on to that next step. Now that we've created access points, we can now start placing down structures. And the way that I go about structures is it's a twofold thing. It's one, it's making sure that you have some simple infrastructure, right? So the larger the village, the more infrastructure, right? So, and by infrastructure, I mean things like a mason for the mason work, a wood cutter for the wood cutting, a candle maker, a baker, a whatever, right? Your infrastructure are those services that allow the village to keep going, right? So think of that as infrastructure. So if you're ever kind of curious about that, that's what's a good start. And so what I normally do is I'll start, I'll create the, I'll start at the beginning, like where the road starts at the gate, and then move my way upward. And what I'll do is I won't I won't fill out every section. What I'll do is I'll just make a few important infrastructure buildings and I'll place them along the road and then I'll build around them. So remember that first concept? We had most of the village is going to be built around this centerpiece. It's going to be the same concept, macro, micro, right? I'm going to add in the infrastructure buildings and then I can put buildings around those buildings, right? You don't start by making all the residential. Those are big sections, big swaths of houses, right? So you start with your infrastructure and then you build around the infrastructure, right? You have this process that helps you. You build, follow each one of these steps. So a great thing to start in the beginning of your village is an inn, right? When people are visiting, they probably don't want to travel all the way up to the top area right here to stay in an inn. They want to be able to stay close, right? Especially after doing huffing and puffing up of that rather crazy switchback that goes upward. So putting an inn like right there at the center at the beginning is a great place to put it, right? It's just right there at the center, right there at the beginning. That's a great first step, right? Now, you don't also just want an inn. Maybe you want a tab. Maybe you want to have some other kind of infrastructure. And normally I can just type in like guild, and there should be some guilds in here. So there's some guilds here. We can throw in any one of these guilds to be helpful. I think there's also something called special buildings. I think those are also in there. Let me double check real quick. There should be some special buildings. I don't remember what they're called. Forage, Ghost, Gothic, Houses. It's called Special Buildings. Here we are. And if you don't know what buildings are, that's fine. If you go over to this little tag right here, Show Names, it will allow you to show the names of each thing that you're looking for. But under Special Buildings, you'll see a bunch of them here. Inns, Herbalist, Fisheries, a Brewery, an Alchemist. All of these things are here. So why don't we throw in each one of these things? Like, I think it'd be good to maybe throw in a smithy of some kind. Why don't we just stick with red? Because we're doing a red theme here, right? So why don't we put this a smithy like right here on this lower level? Why don't we have most of the infrastructure being on that lower level just for the sake of access, right? So we'll put all the major infrastructure on the first level. That way it's all accessible. There's also a mason. Why don't we throw in a mason as well? Let's put them here. This street right here could even be just focused on infrastructure alone, right? So we'll start with that. There's also some carpenters here. We can throw in a carpenter. I think we already put it down there. My bad. Oh, no, we didn't. Mason, carpenter. Let's have them be side by side, right? That way you have all your infrastructure in one location. That's nice. Let's see here. Why don't we put a brewery on a higher level up here, closer to where a lot of the residential will be? So why don't we put that close right here? So you have a nice brewery right there. Let's also make it red. We'll stick with the red theme. You can change colors at any time. And then let's also throw in maybe an herbalist. And maybe the herbalist works with the brewery to make some interesting brews. So why don't we put the herbalist not too far away from where the brewery is, right? Makes total sense. And you'll see that what it also does is it starts filling up the space for you pretty quickly, right? Let's also look up just a couple more infrastructure things. Like we do want to have some kind of church or some kind of temple. And why don't we have that up on the higher level, right? Let's just say that it's a higher plane of existence or whatever. It's closer to there. So why don't we put some kind of temple just right here? That way there's some kind of temple access. That makes kind of sense. And now we have most of our infrastructure kind of put down, right? We have our temples, our infrastructure. We have all of those things, right? So that's kind of helpful. And then from there, once you've built the major infrastructure, you could start building around that infrastructure. First, why don't we change that shadow and just make it black or blue or whatever color you want to make it. You could be green, whatever color you want. It doesn't really matter. That's a choice that you want to make. For now, I'll go with black and maybe switch it over to green later. I'm just going to use the dark for contrast for now, just so that I can kind of see some shadow there. There we go. Let's maybe bring the shadow up a little bit more and then bring the intensity down. There we go. And why don't we just use a super dark green? There we go. There we go. Super dark green. Bring the intensity up. There we go. Let's change the blur so I get some shadows. There we go. Now you can see the shadows, and it causes those things to pop out, those shadows, right? So from here, you want to build the things that are going to be around the infrastructure. And what I'll do is I'll use a block to fill up the space, right? So if I just take a simple small red block, I can now take this block and apply it to these spaces. Okay, so I can put a block right there, maybe a block right here. That looks a little thick, so why don't we put a smaller one like here, like this. Smaller one there. Let's put a block right here. It seems to fit okay. We'll put some blocks in here. Let's put a block right there. Let's put some blocks back here. Let's line them up like this. That looks good. Let's put another block right here. And what I'm doing is I am leaving some negative space because it's nice to have sections of blocks that are maybe like a park, or maybe it's where a well is, or maybe it's where a wooded area is. My suggestion is don't fill in the entire space with a bunch of blocks. By creating a negative space, you can put some specialty blocks inside of it. Okay, just kind of a heads up there. So why don't we keep adding more blocks? Let's put some blocks there. Let's put one here. Let's put some here. That looks good. You know, that's a little close. Let's undo that. We'll put some other stuff in there. Let's put some blocks here. Some here. We can put some backyards back here to make that some bigger buildings. Okay, there we go. I think that looks good. Now that you've done the bigger blocks, now you can start making some smaller buildings to fill in those spaces. Not every single one of them is going to be buildings. Some of those negative spaces might be like a park. So why don't I do both? I'll make a quick smaller section, and I'll also make a park as well, so you can see what that looks like. So let's take this space down here, and we can fill in this negative space right here with some smaller buildings like that. Let's put in a smaller building, maybe like right here. That'll fit nicely right there. Let's put another smaller building right here like this. Here, here. There you go. And so you're starting to see the pattern, and the way that I go about it is that you start with bigger stamps first so that it fills up more space. And then when the space begins to fill up, it seems like it's less work, right? You're like, okay, I don't have to put down 1,000 small buildings. Now I only have to put down like 100. Or maybe I put down enough blocks where I only have to put maybe several dozen. Okay? So the trick is don't give yourself more work by putting down all these small buildings. Start with your big buildings to fill up the space, and then move your way to smaller buildings the more and more the space gets filled up. So you see the method here. It's going to save you a lot of time doing it this way. So don't go with small blocks. Go with your bigger blocks first and then fill them in. I want to create a park right here on this next level, so let's not put it there. And I might want to create like a park or some kind of little green area right here as well. So let's maybe continue adding in a couple more. Let's add in a block here, a building here. Let's switch these out because this one is a bit smaller and this one's a bit bigger. There we go. Fills it in. There we go. Let's go ahead and throw in a couple more buildings. Yes, Timo, giant fan of your work, by the way. Your stuff has been great, and your shadow work is top-notch, I will say. Okay, let's go ahead and put I think this is a good spot for some blocks right here. Let's add those in. Let's put another one like maybe like right there, like that. And then let's put some maybe in the far back here. There we go. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. Okay. All right, that looks good. Why don't we also make that block or that kind of a park? So why don't we throw down some trees? We'll have some trees, some bushes. Let's go and throw this off to the side just to put it in my recently used. And then let's create the park. And the way that I do that is a couple things. Why don't we use hedges to create a hedged off park? And the way that I'll do that is I'll turn off fill and go to stroke. Switch over, and there should be a hedge. And if not a hedge, it should be bushes, but there's a hedge right here. And just use the pen, and you can go like this, and create a little park right here, just like that. We'll just go ahead and control that. Why don't we also create an entrance to that by creating a portal? If you're not certain how big the portals will be on default, it's the size of your grid. So the bigger the grid squares are, the bigger the portal will be. So if you have a small grid on, then you're going to have a small portal. Okay, so just kind of know that's what dictates the portal size is the grid. So what I'll do is I'll create this nice entrance here to open that up. Some things that I love to do to make it more interesting is to put like a tree in each corner to kind of frame it. It can be the exact same size a tree, or it can be multiple different sizes. So if I put a tree in each corner, that's always a nice touch to add in there, right? So we'll do that. Why don't we also throw in some outbuildings as well? If you're not sure what like an outbuilding or an auxiliary building is, it's like shacks, right? It could be like a garage or a shack or a tool shed or a wood shed, or it might be some kind of wood shop or something like that. If you just type in shack, there should be these shacks right here. And now we're going to that next level, right? Now we're going to go some outbuildings to fill in that negative space. I like to use these ones in particular. These are really nice. They kind of look like a shack or a tool shed. And what I'll do is I'll place them just right alongside some other buildings, right? So where the bigger buildings are, like this big block, you would expect like a shack or two to kind of be there. So put one there. Let's maybe put a couple right here. Let's turn off random rotate. Let's put a couple right here like this. That's a nice shack to add in there. Let's maybe add some shack on the outside here. Let's also switch them over. Let's do like these more square ones. Let's put in a series of these shacks right here like this. Let's also put some smaller ones along here. Let's put some right here along this edge. Let's put some maybe out here in this corner along this ledge here. Let's put one here. There we go. And these outbuildings really, really help. And it also makes it look more realistic, right? Because when you look at a village or a town, there's going to be a variety of sizes of buildings, right? And so it's going to make it look more realistic when you have these varying size of buildings, right? So we'll throw in big, medium, size, and small, and then that way you'll have this nice variety. So let's maybe create one here and right here. That looks good. Okay, looks good. All right, let's go with the smallest setting, which is some crates and barrels, right? And the way that great places to put crates and barrels are just going to be right alongside your shacks, right? So if I just place a couple of these just right along my shacks here, that works out great. What you would kind of expect, right? You would expect your crates and barrels to be somewhere along your auxiliary buildings. So let's go ahead and place a couple. And just right along the buildings are the greatest places to put them. I guess this is not going to be a 20-minute village after all. But I know none of you mind that, now do you? All right, so there you go. So then you start to see now that the variety in sizes sells the village, right? It makes it more interesting when you have these variety of sizes to your structures. Just kind of what you would expect, right? A village isn't all these exact same sizes of buildings. There are going to be a variety of them. So this should sell that, make it more interesting. Yeah, the first 20 minutes spent was just on the landscape, right? Whoopsie. All right, let's go ahead and do that. Let's create this. Yeah, let's go ahead and quickly add more of these details. And then why don't we put like a well in that garden space? So let's put a well there. Let's put the well just right there in the center. That works out perfect. And then we could also put some flowers in that garden space, as you would kind of expect. Why don't we go with these nice kind of circular ones, or these nice edges here in these corners. Let's also turn off the layer shadow. We don't need that. And we can kind of place these in the corner. If you don't like that corner piece, you could go with little square ones like this. Want some flowers, maybe some flowers right here along this side, maybe some flowers right here. There you go. Let's turn off those shadows. Yes, it's not a challenge on this one. My mistake. But I think it's because I just didn't do... I don't think the reason why we just didn't go with a challenge with this one is because, you know, villages I mean, I think the process is going to be more helpful to you than me trying to challenge myself. And I want to be more helpful to our user base because this process is just super helpful. But I appreciate people not getting upset that we're not doing it in 20 minutes. So thank you. So then from here, once you've kind of put down most of this stuff, you want to create the little alleyways and side roads that lead to the off buildings, right? Because you already have your main road. So think of it this way. You would expect them to be like maybe a road that goes around here and then leads and goes into here. Maybe that road sprouts off of there and goes to there. Maybe this road kind of goes off and goes to there. Maybe this road goes around this piece. And so this is where you're going to see your little offshoots. They're going to go right in between these spaces and sometimes create spaces like this. So I want to create a space here that connects to that route. See, there's that stairwell. See that stair that goes to that mason? Let's make sure that the road goes to that staircase. Make sure the roads go in between these spaces that lead to each one of these things. So like I want a road that's going to go around and maybe connect to here, or a road that's going to connect to here. So you get the idea of how the road thing kind of works, right? It's going to branch off and then go to these other buildings. So like here, it would all branch off. This would go into here and branch off into there. Here. There's a branch missing here. Why don't we have it connect like this? Fill it in that part. So you're starting to get the general idea about how that works, right? If you create the main route and then build the blocks, then you can build the little tiny offshoots of the roads that branch off to the other segments, right? So it works out rather well. So now you can see those roads kind of connecting. Another thing that I do with my roads, which is really, really helpful, is that you can line them with things. Like you can line them with bushes, you can line them with grass, you can line them with hedges. There's a lot of different options that you can kind of go with. Let's see here. You could use like this grassy hill. You could line it with that. I actually prefer to use hedges. They work, or not hedges, but bushes. They work very well. And the way that I go about doing bushes, by the way, is I don't make them all perfectly, a perfect line. Also, you don't have to make perfect lines. You could just put them in each corner like this. And what that does is this corner will identify a block, right? You notice that when I put one in each corner, it's identifying where that block is. So putting some bushes just right at the entrances, putting them along each corner, like here, creates this illusion that there's a block there, right? So I can put them in each one of these corners where the green is, and then that kind of slowly starts to create this frame that goes around it. Now you can have it go all the way around it. Like maybe you want to have a series that kind of creates like this. And what I'll do is I'll just create a clump of them like this. And then what I'll do is I'll usually have the main route be highlighted with the bushes. So that way it becomes obvious that this is the main route, right? You don't have to do it to every little tiny little side street. You really only need to do it to the main route so that it identifies that this is the main carriageway, right? So that's what I'll do. I'll just put these hedges just along the main route here so that way the main route is kind of highlighted. You can kind of tell, right? So now I know what the main route is because I have these bushes to kind of go along the route there. And it makes it kind of more interesting. The other things you could do are definitely throw in trees, vegetation, contrast against built structures, right? So it's going to look more interesting. So if I throw in just some random trees, maybe right next to here in those open spaces, there's a nice open space there. That looks good. Let's look for some more open spaces. There's a nice open space for a tree. Why don't we also put a smaller tree right there? And then there'll be like a traffic circle that goes around that tree. That looks good. Why don't we put a tree right there in the back? That looks good. Let's also put another tree like maybe along here, along there. Let's put one right there. And then there's a lot of open space right here. So why don't we throw in a line of trees just right there, one in that corner there. Just wherever you see negative space, that's always a good place to kind of place trees as those negative spaces. There we go. We're at 370 changes. Let's go ahead and save. Where are we at for time here? 55. You know, I don't mind going a little over. So let's finish this map. It's a Friday. Let's just go for it, okay? There we go. So the village does kind of come together. You take a step back. There is a lot of negative space here on this village, so you can always resize it. This is a problem that I sometimes bump into where I'll be like, oh no, I accidentally didn't have the village take up the majority of the space of the map, and that can be really frustrating. That's not a problem. You can just resize the map to where you don't have to worry about that. But this is a problem that I do all the time. I'm like, oh no, the village is taking up only like maybe 1/3 of the map. And maybe that's okay. Maybe you want to showcase some elements over here, but I don't. I want to actually make sure the village takes up the majority, so we'll end up resizing it to fit. And that's the beauty of it, right? Is that if you make a mistake like that, it's easy to fix. Okay, let's see here. The one thing we haven't done here is we haven't put anything up here. Why don't we put some buildings just right here, and then the rest of this part back here will be forest area to make it look more interesting. Yeah, and you know, it's okay if you make mistakes. It's like Bob Ross says, right? There are no mistakes. It's just happy accidents. And since you have resize, it's an easy fix. So no problem whatsoever. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to have a series of blocks just be right here. Just a series of blocks right here. And then that's going to be it. I'm not going to put any more structures in there. And what I'll do instead is put an entire forest in the backside there, and that will make it more interesting, right? Having this like little forest section, like all along here, we'll have a forest section all along the back. And also this is a nice little location, right? Now you have like this wooded area. Maybe there's some assassins that are coming after the main, coming after the leader of the village, right? So this would make it more interesting, throwing in these kind of wooded area. That should make it more fascinating. Let's throw in some of those individualistic smaller trees as well. Type in tree, and there should be these smaller ones. Let's go ahead and place some of these. Let's have some trees go around the temple to make it look more interesting. Maybe along here and here, there and there, and then we'll put some smaller trees along like that. There we go. And now we have this nice wooded area in the back. That works out nice. There we go. Let me just take a step back and look at it. That looks fine. Okay. Let me see here. Let's go ahead and add in some outbuildings as well. Let's put in a couple outbuildings here, here. Let's put one in the back right here. And in fact, why don't we put like a smaller fence along this ledge right here? That should be kind of nice, a little fence. In fact, fences are just nice to have in general, and they're great to use to wrap around a block. You don't have to also use these bushes right here. You can use fences as well. So check this out. If I type in fence like this, there's this nice simple fence right here. And if you want to create like a cool little fenced area, you can. Like maybe you want to put a fence that goes along this edge, just like this, and it fences off that little area right there. Let's change the size so it fits a little better. There we go. Maybe I want to put a fence around this segment right here, just to block off this segment. You can do that. Let's use the brush or the line tool. So maybe I want to create a series of hedges that go across like this for the fences there. Maybe I want to have some fencing along this spot, like right here, that goes along right there, just to block off that portion. Maybe I want to have a fence that goes from here to here, like that. Oopsie, I better make sure they're on the right layer as well. Let's push this down a layer. There we go. My mistake. Don't want it to be above, right? Let's put a fence that maybe goes like this, and then just goes around like this. And then it just connects with that staircase right there. So you have a nice one there. Let's keep looking around. Oh, you know what? You could put a fence maybe along this segment right here, and then connect it to right here. That might look good. Let's see here. What other segments? Oh, there's a nice segment right here. Why don't we connect this segment right here? That looks good. Some nice segments there. Let's do this one as well. Connect it against here. And then why don't we have it connect like that. There we go. Let's go ahead and push this down a layer where it's supposed to be. There we go. You know, I don't really like that one. Let's remove that. But you get the general idea, right? Creating these kind of fenced areas adds a little bit more realism to it, makes it a little bit more interesting. It's kind of what you would expect, right? Yeah, you do have to change layers. Let's go ahead and create a little fenced area that goes like this, and then maybe it connects into this kind of backyard-like area like this. And then we'll have it connect there like that. And then why don't we also create the road that kind of goes into it? So let's put some road in here like this and along there like that. That looks good. Okay, that looks good. Let's continue adding the bushes along the route. If I was doing less talking, this wouldn't take nearly as long. So if you're like, well, wait a minute, this actually won't take you probably an hour following this method. It should probably go a little bit quicker, actually. Okay. Oh, you know what? I do believe these are down a layer as well. My mistake. Something you just got to be aware of is the layers. There we go. Let me just take a step back and look at it. Okay, that looks good. Why don't we save it and then we'll resize it? Do you ever do map reviews or critiques? I don't, but that's not a bad idea for a stream. Like, I think that's kind of a cool idea. Like, we could go over the explore page and like look over maps, or maybe users want to share a map and then they want to review it. We can do that. I'm fine with all of that. That's totally fine with me. Let's go ahead and resize. We'll snap to grid. And then what I'll do is I want to have some of my river in the shot. So what I'll do is I'll resize it. I think a square might not be a bad size. Let's do about that. Why don't we actually go a little bit further this way and create a little bit more room? This way, this way. I think that looks good. As long as we got some of the river in it, I think that should be okay. Let's scale it a little bit more. Think about this size. About this looks good. Let's go with this. We'll continue. I'm going to remove objects from outside selected region, save and proceed. And what it will do is it will save the original map and then it will clone. It will create a new map with the new resized. So now when I look at it, you'll notice that I still have the main village there and I have that river there. I can do all these changes. I can make the river, I can change some things, like maybe I can have the river bend around it more. That could be more interesting, right? Things are destined to change. Get used to that. But what happens if I had the river kind of go around, like something like that? That could make it more interesting, right? So why don't we do that? Why don't I go to add? I'm going to add this section right here, and then I'll go back to subtract. And then what I'll do is I'll just have the river kind of loop around this way. And now I have a little bit more terrain. That makes it a little bit more interesting, right? And I can go in and then take that soft fill here. I am using the drawing pen for this, but you could also use other stuff. Let's do that. Let's push this down a layer. There we go. Let's also bring the size down just a little bit. Let's see here. Stamp scale, bring that down a little bit. Let's push that up against this ledge here. That looks good. There we go. Okay, and now the terrain looks a little bit better. Why don't we also throw in just some random terrain sections? Like, let's maybe have like a hill that connects there, and then maybe like another hill that kind of connects like this. And let me make sure that they're facing the right way. Okay, let's go ahead and flip it. Ooh, it's facing the wrong way, it looks like. There we go. That looks good. Okay. Yeah, I think overall this looks okay. All right. Yep, that changes quite a bit, creating that river around there. I think that does add quite a bit. Let me see. Let me push this a little further away, like that. There we go. Okay, that looks good. All right, now why don't we create a bridge that goes across as well? Like here's where the road is. Right here, this road goes right here. Let's see, put on the right layer here. Oopsie, that's not the right one. This one is. Here we go. And then, oops, let's bring the opacity down just a little bit. And the road is going to go like this, because I want to create a bridge that goes across like this. Like that. Let's go ahead and you should be able to just use a bridge. Let's make it a wooden one. I think that makes the most sense. And then I'll just go from the top of that hill, the top of that hill. And let's make sure that it's on the right layer. There we go. That looks good. Let me just make sure it's the right size. And then we'll go ahead and create the path right here that goes down. There you go. Okay. There we go. Oops, 671 changes. Whew. We better get started on that, don't we? I like to live on in the danger zone, right? Okay, sweet. So I think we have our access points to get there. What we need to do now is just maybe finish off the terrain and then also paint in some shadows, because I think shadows will really be that last step that should make this a little bit more interesting, and then add in some filters. So what I'll do first is, why don't I change up? You'll notice that the grass texture that I'm using is flat, in a sense that there aren't a lot of artifacts with line work to make it more interesting. So what I'll do is I'll switch over to a texture that has more artifacts. Like this grass simple dark has a lot of artifacts in it. That could work really well. There should be some other grass ones that have a lot of artifacts, like this one right here. This grass detailed is a good one. This forest floor light is a good one. This grass detailed dark. This one right here, grass detailed, which has some brown in it, that's a good choice, because you're going to have a cooler green color and a darker brown, or a warmer brown color. These things are going to help a lot, because you would expect a mix of dirt and grass in your landscape, right? And so instead of having to use two textures with grass and dirt, you have one that has both. So this grass detail right here is going to work really, really well here. So if I just kind of apply it like this here and there, I might even have to change some things, but just kind of applying this texture right here can be really, really helpful to kind of not have to do all of this texturing. We could also change the size of this as well. We can change the texture size by going to advanced settings and then go to texture scale. And we can bring the scale up and have some varying scale. So some parts will be really thick, and then we can bring the scale down a little bit and throw in a smaller bit. That way we have a little bit more realism, right? By having these varying like textures. And you see that already it starts to kind of look a little bit more interesting because we have that dirt patches there. That's helpful. Alphas are a great way to also throw down. And it's not, I don't think they're called alphas anymore. I think they're called overlays. Let me just make sure. Overlays are good. Let me just take a look here. Let's go over to show names. There's this grass patch. This works really well. Why don't we make some darker sections? Why don't we bring the brightness down like this? Let's also change the scale. And then why don't we just apply a little bit of these darker sections? Let me just see what it looks like. A little too much. Let's undo these real quick. Let me go to history and we'll do that. Go back. Okay, these darker grass patches will look nice. Let's bring the opacity down to about 40. And then I'll just create some contrast with some darker grass patches right along here. Let's put some darker grass patches. Remember the tricks, contrast, right? This is a darker texture, so it's going to contrast really well against that lighter green texture that I'm using, right? So why don't we just put these grass textures along this edge here to make it more interesting, and then we'll put some just random grass patches, some darker grass patches here. Let's put some along this edge, right here, along this edge. There we go. That looks good. Some dark grass patches here. There we go. That looks a little bit more realistic. Yeah, there we go. Now we had it in. Now all we did was just use 3 textures with varying sizes to do all of this, right? You're doing less work, right? This way you don't have to use 12 textures to blend them. You can only use 3. Use textures that have a lot of artifacts. Like if you look carefully, you'll see all the nice dirt and grass in there, some nice artifacts, and the overlays, formerly known as alphas, but now they are, called overlays. So if you look for them, I think this overall looks good. Why don't we also throw in some forested areas? I think it would be nice to throw in some forested areas. So why don't we put like a big forest, like right here in the back along here. So some nice forested area in here. Let's put in a nice forest area right here along this ledge here. Let's put in maybe another forest section like right here. And then let's put one right here as well, just to kind of continue off here. And then whenever you place a big group like this, put some smaller ones like this to create some kind of transition between the negative space. And by negative space, I just mean the textures. And then this way it has a more gradual feel to it. When I'm placing these, it doesn't look like it's just a big glob of trees, right? You put these smaller ones down to create a transition to make it more interesting, right? You go to the heart of the wooded area, the interior, out to the exterior where you would find some smaller trees as you're going further away from the interior. So now you have some nice trees in there. Let's go ahead and save that. A lot of changes. Whenever you're texturing, you're going to do a lot of changes. That's just gonna, the way that it works, you're going to be a painter. A painter doesn't make a beautiful painting in just several dozen strokes. They do it in thousands of strokes, right? It takes a lot of effort to make your stamps kind of blend in well with each other. So now that we've done all of that, I think we're pretty much, like, there's so much more that we could add, but I think because we're already 11 minutes past the hour, why don't we throw in the last bit of details, which is shadows. So what I'll do here is I'm going to select everything so that I don't accidentally select it and just lock it. Now nothing can get selected. And the first step is to select where the light source is. So if I just type in light, I don't care much for the light sources for Watercolor Cities. So let's use Fantasy Battle Maps instead. And what I'll end up doing here is we'll choose a light source. And there are a couple approaches to this. If you want to do the most simplest light source, then just have it be high noon, right? Where the light is just straight at the bottom. And then all you have to do is just add a drop shadow to all the stamps. If you wanted to do something a little bit more complex, where there's a cast shadow, then you might want to consider doing a different trick. Let's, for instance, say that the light is going from this direction over here. It's kind of moving its way. Let's bring the opacity down a little bit. Then what I can do is a couple tricks here. I can unselect everything, go lock, and I'm only going to select the stamps themselves, okay? So what I'll do is I'll go like this and select every single stamp that I can. I'm going to go with Object Shadow, Custom Object Shadow. That works good. And what I'll do is I'm going to bring the blur up so where it's fairly noticeable. I'm going to bring the intensity up so where it's fairly noticeable. And then what I'll do is I'll move horizontal a little bit like this. And then I'll also move a little bit vertical away from the light source like that. There we go. Why don't we bring the shadow blur down a little bit? There we go. That looks good. Now you have a nice shadow there. And one thing you'll notice is that the bigger the stamp, the less likely the shadow will decouple itself from the bush, from the stamp. But when you look at like a smaller stamp like this bush right here, you'll notice that it's kind of disconnected. So you'll have to make those changes. Let's go ahead and bring this up. I don't really care much for how thick the shadows are. So let's go ahead and reselect them again. And we'll do this again. Let's bring the intensity down a little bit. There we go. That way it's not so intense. There we go. Let's bring the blur down just a little bit. There we go. Intensity down a little bit. That way I can see a little bit more of the shape of the buildings there. That looks good. Okay. And what I'll do is I'm going to turn off the shadows on some things, like these stairs right here. I don't really need those. I can turn those off. None. There we go. Same thing with these stairs over here. Let's turn these off. So I'll select these. There we go. Could leave the shadows on. Could do that. That's fine. But there we go. There we go. And now you have at least some kind of cast shadow being cast from each building. Now we will have to make some changes. For instance, I should select every single one of these bushes. If you right click the little hamburger menu here, go select all from this set, and then I should be able to adjust these offsets a little bit to make sure that the shadows aren't decoupled from the stamp itself. And now you still have those shadows there available. So when you zoom in and your players are walking around, at least you'll have these nice shadows here. Notice here that these also, the shadows are kind of broken a little bit. That's okay. We'll just go ahead and select every single one of them from the set, and we'll couple them back up again. So not too complex, pretty easy stuff, right? And then we'll just go ahead and push these offsets. Let's go ahead and do it manually a little bit like this. There we go. There you go. That's good. Okay. Want to make sure the shadows aren't decoupled, but you get the general idea. Like, look at this one. See how these are kind of decoupled from each other? So we're probably going to have to fix that. Let's select all from the set. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll adjust different ones at a time. I just select all of them at once, so that way at least there's a hard shadow, and then I can adjust them as need be later. So I'll go ahead and control this, change that. Because they're so much smaller, I'll have to do it incrementally. Like this. There we go. There we go. Now they're not decoupled. You have some nice shadows there. There we go. I think you're kind of getting the overall idea of how my approach is. So let's do the last bit of shadow work. Like I think the shadows work well for the stamps, but we do want, what about the terrain itself? And there's a whole different ways that you can go about doing this. The quickest way is just to use the top layer, but you can also use the shape tool. Now I've been using a lot of the top layer in a lot of videos for shadows. So why don't I go with a different method? I notice also that the UI is glitching a little bit. Whenever you see some glitching in the UI, don't panic. Quickly save. Once it's finished saving, you're just going to simply refresh the page. Because what might be happening is that if I go up to this little tab right here, it might show me that I'm going through a lot of gig. See my high memory usage, 1.3 gig. That's really high. So now that I've saved it, just go ahead and refresh the page a couple times. It looks like it's going to make me log in a little bit. That's fine. We'll let that refresh, and then we'll go back in here like this, and I'll go back to the tab. And it should be a little bit slower. It's still a little bit of high usage there, but it should be okay. And you'll notice, though, that the glitching has stopped. All you had to do was just save and refresh the page. So don't freak out, just save and refresh. Now, like I was saying earlier, I always seem to show the top layer for my shadow work. So why don't we do something different? Why don't we actually use the shape tool this time for that? And so what I'll do is I'll switch over to brush. I'm going to go add. And what I'll do is I'm going to go with don't merge, no stroke, fill. And you can choose whatever color you want. I used dark green, so why don't we just do that? But you can use black or whatever color you want. It doesn't really matter. It's art, so the shadows can be whatever color you want them to be. It doesn't matter. And then what I'll do here is I want to have it set to blur, and I want to bring the opacity down. And let me just apply one just to see what layer it's on, where it's at. That looks like the right layer. Let me make sure. Layer down. Let's go down a layer. There we go. That looks good. That looks good. Let's also bring the blur up. Let's get a little bit more blurry edges. And let's bring the opacity down just a little bit more. That looks good. There we go. And remember where my light source is. Now, me personally, when it comes to light sources, I can kind of use my eyeball on how to do it. But if you're not good at eyeballing light sources, then just put down the line work for it, right? So the light source is clearly going like this, right? So I'm just going to use this line as kind of like a little bit of a guide. So I have that. So now I have the direction of my light sources. I'll usually put down lines if I have a complex stuff, but it might not be that difficult for you. It's up to you. And what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put the shadow on this side like this. And what I'll do is I'm just going to fill in like this. And I'm going to add, because I want the hill to be a little bit bigger, I'll kind of have it overlap. And I want it to overlap over the, where the river is. That looks good. Let's change the opacity to where I want it to be a little bit. Let's bring the blur all the way up. That looks good. And I'll actually switch over to merge shape so that they merge. And with a smaller brush, I can kind of hit up these sections right here where the shadow is supposed to be. That looks good. Let's also add a little bit here where there should be some shadow along here. That looks good. And then why don't I create those more straighter segments? Now, if you're confused on how a drop shadow should look, here's the thing. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Like you can't always generate a perfect shadow. And so, and this is something that even I struggle with, but let me give you a little cheat. Guess, okay? The trick is just to trick the viewer into thinking that the shadow is correct. You don't have to make the shadow perfect. Actually, I've noticed it's okay if it's off a little bit, right? Don't let yourself get flustered with, oh, well, this shadow, would it be perfect like this? Would this edge be here? Don't worry about that, right? The fact that you're even putting the shadow down at all or trying to is much better than not having a shadow at all, because shadows create depth. So if you get kind of flustered and you're like, well, this isn't kind of ending up the way I wanted it to, don't get yourself flustered. Do the best to your ability, right? Like, I don't know exactly how this hill would be perfect. I don't know how the shadow would be perfect, but I can at least throw down a guess, right? I'm using the edge of where the top of the hill is as a guide to where I want the hill, the hill shadow to look, right? So if you get kind of confused, don't worry about making it perfect. Just have it be believable. I think that's really the big trick, is you want them to be believable. And I absolutely agree with you. I should be taking that entire wall segment right there, that entire fence segment right there. I should be selecting that and also using that. So if I can find that, I'll do that. Let me just do this. If I go to all and turn off all in the select section up here, and then go over to shape, only the shapes will show up on this side right here. There's that wooden shape right there. That's perfect. Why don't we go ahead and add in that next shadow, right? Someone was saying we kind of missed that. So let's put in the shape of the wall there. So if I go to shadow here, let's bump up the blur all the way up. Let's bump the intensity up a lot. All the way up. There we go. And if I just move it a little bit to the side like this, and then let's go down a little bit like that. Let's bring this blur up. Let's bring the intensity up. There we go. There we go. There we go. Now you can have that hard shadow. Let's also take this and put it up a layer to where it's above the buildings itself. So the shadow is cast on the buildings, but it's not cast on some of the trees. So because the trees are higher up than that. So you could always add that. It is a bit of a sharp shadow. We could also just bring the intensity down a little bit so it's not so quite as heavy. There we go. Let's bring the blur down just a little bit. There we go. There we go. So now you have a nice shadow there for that as well. And if you want, because it is, the shadow is so much darker, we could break the rules a little bit and bring the opacity or bring the brightness up of that stamp. Oopsie, I did the wrong one. My mistake. Let's select shape. Which one is it? Wooden wall. Perfect. Let's bring the brightness up on this just a little bit, because those shadows make it indistinguishable between the wall, because the wall is so dark. So if I just bring the brightness up a little bit on the wall, that should resolve that problem a little bit. There we go. Now you can see I can tell the difference between the shadow of the wall and the wall itself. Remember, tricks are contrast. Contrasts are the tricks. Okay, but there's a couple more shadows that we need to add in as well. Like there's different layers as well. For instance, you'll see here that we'll turn merge shape off here. And let's go ahead and select this one hill. That way I can get that again, like that. And then right here, we'll put a little bit of a shadow along this edge of this hill right here, like that. Let's put another shadow right here along this edge. And the bigger the shadow is, the higher up the elevation is. So if I wanted to show this as being like a little higher up, then I would have a heavier shadow, thicker and darker. If I wanted to show that it wasn't that far up, then you can bring the size down a little bit smaller. So those are the good places to put the shadow work. In fact, what I should do is just make them a little bit, I could bring the opacity up just a hair more. There we go. That way it's a little bit more noticeable. There we go. Let's go ahead and push that up. Let's push this one up a little bit. Oopsie, not that one, this one. There we go. There we go. And now you have a nice village kind of coming together, right? You have, let's go ahead and start down at the bottom. This is something I do all the time. I'll go ahead and start at the center part, at the point where we start right here. We'll go across. You go across here. Here's the switchbacks going up into this village. No carts are getting up into this village. It's all it's just walking up the village, right? And then I'll just kind of walk around. And what this little walk around does is it helps me to do a couple things. It makes sure that there's a continuity, that things are in the right locations. It helps me find errors that I made. And it also makes sure that I put myself in my player's shoes, right? As I'm walking around the map, trying to make sure that everything kind of works out together. We've got all that pieces together here. That looks good. I've got a little path that goes up to here. I might want to turn off that shadow. See what happens when you do that? You look for mistakes that you made, right? So I can go there. Same thing when I go over here. I see that this shadow right here, and I accidentally moved it by accident. Oops, see? And that's where you kind of fix some of the errors that you might have made. Oh, notice here that I moved this whole thing. A whole bunch of things moved by accident, and I didn't mean to. Oh yeah, that whole thing got moved. Oopsie. I'll have to move a couple things to fix that. That will go through history. Have to remove some of those things that I accidentally moved here, like that hill. Oopsie. Mistakes, they happen. Go with line. There we go. It's getting warm in here. There we go. I'll fix that. My mistake. There we go. Looks better. Oh, see, all these things got moved by accident somehow. I must have accidentally moved them. It happens. There we go. That looks right. Ooh, this one's way off. How'd that get way over there? Oh my goodness, the whole thing moved. I wonder how all of that moved all of a sudden. I must have accidentally selected all and moved it. There we go. There's my mistake right there. I accidentally moved everything. There we go. Problem solved. There we go. Okay. You know what? Let's do that last bit. Where are we at? 27? Yeah, let's do that last bit. We'll add in filters. So when it comes to filters, there's a whole bunch of things that you can use here. I think really, let's go ahead and use red sky to kind of bring out more of the reds, but I don't want it to be super obvious. So what I'll do is just bring it up a little bit to kind of bring out some of those reds. There we go. That looks a little bit better. I like that. Looks good. Let's also throw in, I want to throw in a little bit more artifacts on the map. So there's a couple things that we could do here. You could use this old watercolor, like you could use watercolor paper. Oopsie, let's delete that. Let's do the one with the default watercolor paper. You could use this. Kind of hard to see what it looks like, but you can see the watercolor paper effect on the map. I can turn it off. You can see what it looks like. You can see it that way. Turn it on and off. I'm going to turn it on. I think it just looks nice. It adds in those artifacts, which I think are nice. See, it adds in those nice artifacts. So that looks nice. There we go. There we go. Looks good. So make sure that I put everything back where it belongs. I moved quite a few things that kind of got into a little bit of trouble there. So we'll move everything back. This is why you always go back over your stuff. There we go. Yeah, looks good. Looks good. I'm cleaning up my mess here. There we go. My mistake. Just kind of happens. There we go. I'm glad you're seeing that I make mistakes, because I don't want you to think that you're the only ones. Believe me, I make so many mistakes when making a map. And that's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It happens. Okay, let's go ahead and keep adding our stuff here. There are no mistakes, just happy accidents, right? There we go. Oopsie, wrong one. Yeah, that looks good. Let me just make sure that I got everything put together here. Oh yeah, this got moved out of the way. Oh yeah, a whole bunch of stuff got really screwed up. I'm not sure how that happened. My mistake. But that's okay. Mistakes happen and they can be fixed. Yeah, there we go. Much better. Cool. Okay, let's take a step back. Yeah, okay, cool. Put everything back where it belongs. Yeah, well, I think you guys got the overall idea about kind of how the thing like overall kind of works. There's just these steps that I like to take let's go ahead and put all these back together. I'm not sure how everything got moved. It's probably just an accident of some kind. It got moved by. It happens. There we go. That looks good. Put that back. Yeah, but I think overall this looks good. We have our various tiers, so that way it's not a flat village. So you've got multiple levels, so you have that contrast with these multiple levels. You also have the contrast from a river and a bridge. You have these dark contrasts from these trees here. So you see the overall kind of tricks when kind of putting together any kind of map. It's just following contrasts, right? That is my overall trick when making a map interesting, is throwing in as many contrasts as possible, lights and darks, height variation, water versus land. It might be maybe your lighting situation where you have maybe some green lighting for a bioluminescent section, and then maybe some warm lighting for a torch that's somewhere in a cavern, right? So it's all about following a series of contrasts that make your maps more interesting. And by following that rule of contrasts, no matter what you create, it will still be a compelling landscape or terrain or whatever it is you're making, because you're using those contrasts. This is a simple trick that artists do all the time. Simple contrast. It always helps. Okay. Well, I'll probably work on this map off screen. There's a ton of things that I could do to it. There's a bunch of sections in it that look really flat on the sides, but I think you get the overall idea, the filters to use, how to add in shadows, and shadows do a lot. They really help. All right, everyone, thank you so much. Oh yeah, we didn't get all the shadow work there. I see some mistakes, but that's okay. But you guys get the general idea. When you do that little walk around or that little walkabout at the end to make sure that everything's there, that's when you'll start looking around for all the errors, the mistakes that you made. And that's exactly what I ended up doing. You notice, when I started walking around, I noticed so many mistakes, and it just kind of happens. So you always do like a final walkthrough at the end of your map to make sure that you didn't miss anything. Yes, it's a lovely little town. Not a whole lot going on. It's a very small village. Not more than just maybe 24 buildings, it looks like here. All right, well, I hope these steps helped. And you would follow this. And by the way, you would follow the same logic when making a larger city. Like if you're making a capital, a large city, you would just follow the same concepts. Build the landscape first. Then you would build the main centerpiece, right? Like a castle or whatever. And then the main route. And then all the infrastructure. And then you would build around the infrastructure. And then all the little roads, and then all the little stamps to fill in the negative space. So if you follow the same process for the village, you would do the exact same process for a capital. So it's just that obviously when it comes to a capital, it's just going to take you a lot longer because it's just a lot bigger. But the process will speed it up. It will make it not as difficult. All right, well, I'm done blabbing. All of you have a great weekend, and I will see you all on Monday, okay? Please take care. Bye, everybody.